Hey guys, as you can see by the title of my presentation, I'll be speaking on racial injustice, so let's get right into it. Why is racial injustice still an issue in 2020, despite a constitution that declares equality? One nation under God. Why is it blackness is a substitute for criminality? Black people are more dangerous than others? Communities divided by race? Homes undervalued? Schools underfunded? And higher unemployment because they are Black.
We have not yet reached the turning point of that arc. When you have communities intentionally divided by race, when Black and brown families live in poor and substandard homes, when the school systems in Black and brown communities are underfunded and run down, when the land in these communities are undervalued, when your built environment treats you as less than, it is inevitable that companies and government move to locate dirty power facilities, toxic waste sites, and dangerous infrastructure projects to these areas, because powerful entities have less regard for the lives of Black people, for the lives of brown people, for the lives of poor people, and for the lives of those who are less educated, because these people lack political power, and the majority in society have been treating minorities in society as less than for generations without much consequence. So why stop now? There are studies by the NAACP and others that cite that around 2/3 of Black people in America live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant, notably higher than white populations.
One more quick film here.
He then accuses me of bringing brass knuckles, a deadly weapon, into a United States airport. I was almost at a loss of words, which is rare for someone like me, but I politely pointed out to him that the ring was plastic, it wasn't brass, and these weren't knuckles, it was just a ring that went over 2 fingers instead of 1 finger. But have you ever talked to someone and felt like you didn't exist? Like when they spoke to you, they spoke right through you. Well, that's how I felt. He got more angry at my explanations, looked me in my face and said, "You people always lie. I know that this is a weapon, and I'm not going to let someone dangerous like you board a plane today."
Now, as you can see from the 2 short films there are 3 types of racial injustice. They are social, they are economical, and they are political. Eric Garner, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, all still seeking justice now. We can't breathe. We can't breathe. The infamous words of a man's last story. Racism is a pandemic, and it's an ongoing pandemic that's been among us for too long. Here's a graph that shows a study conducted on how police are twice as likely to use force against people of color. Based on the data, you can see that Blacks are twice as likely compared to whites. Here's another study conducted on infant mortality by maternal race and education. Scaling all the way from 8th grade to the advanced professional degree, you can see that Blacks are almost double the deaths of whites per 1,000 in every category. Now, why is that? Because Blacks are more dangerous than others. Now, one of the first steps we can take to put our first foot towards a brighter tomorrow is with activism. Now, there are many forms of activism, and the most common we are probably familiar with are the demonstrative types. The demonstrative types would be the rallies, the street marches, strikes, and sit-ins. However, those aren't the only ways. We have smaller actions we could take that have a compounding effect. That will be writing letters to newspapers, petitioning elected officials, running or contributing to a political campaign that acknowledges racial injustice and that it is a problem. Lastly, boycotting businesses that are blind to racial injustice. Secondly, we have challenging the status quo. Now, for those unfamiliar, the status quo is simply the political and social issues going on in that particular moment that have to do with change. Now, why is that important? Because without building the courage to challenge the status quo, we don't develop, we don't prosper, and we don't grow. A better world is possible, but that means combining challenging the status quo, becoming leaders, challenging the status quo, and practicing small steps with activism. Now, in today's media age, everything is online. It's easy for us to educate ourselves on the topic. Even with superstar athletes using their voice to speak on the matter, such as LeBron James, the most famous athlete in the world, as well as others. And many other sports teams join the racial injustice protest, ending racism, and Black Lives Matter. Another way is through education in the elementary school. In certain schools, they start as early as 8, educating on ending racism. Now, right here in New York City, we have a Center for Racial Justice in New York City, and it trains to dismantle racism in public schools. The racial justice in schools provides public schools, students, as well as faculty with intensive professional development to act on racial injustice, anti-racism. Right here in New York City. Now, although we are winning the fight, the battle is a long one. Many far-right groups and white supremacy have put a block in our path with structural bias against people of color, Black, brown, Latino, long-standing factors that are racial, economical, and social. These systemic inequities cause bias and unconscious prejudice, and this is favoritism towards groups and stigmatism towards others. Now, a real-world action we can take is joining in on peaceful protests, standing up and using our voice. These reforms, such as racial injustice education and anti-racism, leave the harmful forms of bias and explicit racism in the past so we can truly be one nation under God. And I'd like to close out this poem by Langston Hughes, who was a poet and social activist in the early 20th century, who portrayed the life of a Black man. He says, "I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen. When company comes, but I laugh and eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table. When company comes, nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen. Then besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. Thank you.